Have you ever been in one of those arguments where it feels like you're not just on different pages, but in completely different books? Well, today we're diving into a framework called Tamaraland. It's designed for exactly those kinds of impossible disagreements, and honestly, it might just change the way you think about conflict forever. So, let's start with a little thought experiment. Imagine you're at a play, but it's not on a single stage. It's happening in dozens of rooms all at once. There's no way you can see it all, right? You pick one actor to follow, you see their story unfold, but you know that all around you in other rooms, crucial events are happening that you're missing. This right here is the core idea behind Tamaraland. Our own reality is just like that play. It's fragmented, and no single person ever gets the whole story.
So here's our roadmap for today. We're going to start with how the stories we tell can actually become weapons in a conflict. Then we'll step inside Tamaraland and check out its 7 guiding principles. We'll talk about why the goal here isn't about winning an argument, and we'll wrap up with the biggest takeaway, the incredible power of being able to hold multiple truths at the same time.
Okay, so let's get to the heart of the problem. You know, our deepest, most painful conflicts, they almost always come from one thing. Someone trying to force their single version of events onto a situation that's way more complicated. This is the moment when stories stop being about connecting with each other and, well, they start becoming weapons.
And there's a name for this. It's called rhetorical history. Now, this isn't about what actually happened, in some neutral, objective way. No, this is about crafting a narrative about the past to control what's happening right now. It's strategically shaping a story to assign blame, to claim the moral high ground, or to make your own actions seem like the only logical choice.
And using history this way has a really dark side. When one story completely takes over, it can be used to hide who's really responsible for causing harm. It builds these moral alibis for terrible behavior, and it creates what the source material calls a moral scoreboard, where everyone gets neatly sorted into heroes and villains. And when that happens, there's no room for any other perspective. It actively creates enemies.
So if the problem is forcing one single story on everyone, then the solution has to be a totally new way of talking to each other, right? A new kind of architecture for conversation that can actually hold many stories at once without them just imploding. And this is where we step into Tamaraland.
And here we are, back to that incredible opening metaphor. This entire framework is directly inspired by that real decentralized play called Tamara. It gets that in our families, in our workplaces, in our communities, we are all basically actors in different rooms, all seeing different parts of the very same, very complex plot.
So here's the crucial point. Tamaraland is not a tool for negotiation. It's not about compromise. It is not trying to get everyone to finally agree on one single master story. Its entire reason for being is to create a space where multiple, even totally contradictory points of view can just exist at the same time.
Okay, so that sounds great in theory, but how does it actually work in practice? Well, it's not a free-for-all. The whole framework is built on 7 core principles that create the structure needed for these incredibly difficult but totally necessary conversations.
Think of these 7 principles as like ethical guardrails. Rooms is all about honoring that everyone's personal experience is real and valid to them. Hallways are for protecting those confusing moments when our old, comfortable stories start to fall apart. Doors means keeping the invitation to talk open while respecting that someone can choose whether or not to walk through. The empty chair is about honoring the voices that aren't even there. The map you don't have, that's a constant reminder to be humble because none of us has the full picture. Footprints helps ground the conversation in shared memories, and the 7th room, that points to our responsibility to the future.
I really want to pause on one of these for a second, the empty chair. This is all about actively acknowledging who and what is not in the room. It's such a powerful way to recognize the voices that have been silenced or pushed out, and to treat their absence not as just a blank space, but as a meaningful, important part of the story.
And this brings us to a really critical point. See, most of our models for having a difficult conversation are about getting to a conclusion, making a decision, reaching an agreement. Tamaraland has a completely, fundamentally different goal.
Check out this quote from an organizational theorist named Louis R. Pondy. It's a bit of a mind-bender. We tend to think that cooperation is the normal state of things and conflict is the weird exception. But Pondy says maybe it's the other way around. Maybe conflict is the baseline, the normal reality of human systems, and those moments of true cooperation are actually pretty rare and fragile.
So if Pondy's right and conflict is the norm, well then we need tools designed to navigate that reality. Not just tools meant to force everyone back to some happy, cooperative state that might have been an illusion in the first place. We need a way to live within the disagreement.
And this is where it gets really fascinating. Look at this direct comparison. Check out the success criteria at the bottom. A traditional dialogue succeeds if it produces a good recommendation or a decision. But Tamaraland succeeds if it leads to reduced enemy-making and a sustained relationship. See, the entire goal is different.
Let me put it another way. Deliberative dialogue is all about getting everyone on the same page so you can make a decision. Tamaraland is about finding a way to stay in the same book together even when you realize you are always going to be on different pages.
And that, right there, leads us to the fundamental shift in perspective that Tamaraland offers. It's this profound change in what we even think the goal of communication is when we're in a conflict.
The whole point is to just stop the war. Stop the battle over who has the one single objective history. Instead, the goal is to accept what the source calls the polyphonic nature of our lives. This idea that many different valid voices and melodies are all happening at once. Healing doesn't start when one person finally admits they were wrong. It starts when we can finally acknowledge that diverging, even paradoxical realities exist at the very same time.
And this slide just illustrates that shift perfectly. We move away from trying to persuade, to prove our legitimacy, to control the narrative, and we move toward just being present with each other, actually listening and having some humility. It's no longer a hunt for the right story, it's a mission to make space for all the stories.
And this is the bottom line, really. Tamaraland doesn't offer any easy answers. It doesn't promise you'll all agree in the end. It promises something much, much harder, but often so much more important. A way to stay connected, to stay in a relationship, even when you're facing a painful disagreement, where a shared story just isn't possible.
So I'll give you with this question to chew on. Think about that really difficult conflict in your own life. What's the story you've been unwilling to hear? Which room, filled with a perspective that is completely alien to your own, have you refused to even step inside of?